Hi, I'm Jeffrey Thomas, bringing you another episode of my crazy aviation journey. This one's all about when I became Australia's first male flight attendant in the modern era. So, how did that come to pass? Well, I joined McRobinson Miller Airlines in late 1970 and started off as a baggage handler on the ramp in Port Hedland. Um, and then I gradually moved up through the ranks doing load and trim sheets and shift supervising. And eventually I applied for and was given the job of a purser loader on an aircraft called the Twin Otter. And I'm showing you the Twin Otter on the screen now. This aircraft was about 20 passengers, and McRobinson Miller Airlines used it to fly to outlying cattle stations, Aboriginal missions. It also used it to link to Kulin Island and also do some passenger flights between some of the smaller centres like Wittenoom Gorge when it was open at the time. So my role was to unload and load it, to give the passengers, if we had any, a safety drill. If it was a meal flight, we'd serve them a boxed lunch or a boxed breakfast and drinks. And then if the pilot preferred to read the newspaper, which they often did, sorry guys, you did, they would ask us to fly the aeroplane in the cruise, which was a lot of fun, heaps of fun. So yeah, it was a great gig. Anyway, McRobinson Miller Airlines purchased a new model of this aircraft, the 300 series, and a colleague and I were sent to Perth to do a training course on the new one, the differences, and also help write the manual for the differences between the 100 and the 300 series. And we were to return to Port Hedland on a Fokker F-28 jet. These are 65 passenger jet aircraft. This particular service was actually a freighter. It was configured as a freighter. We used to cabin load these aircraft with freight. They had special seat packs that were installed, and into those seat packs would go the freight, and then also freight would go into the belly. Now, McRobinson Miller Airlines, MMA, used to use these aircraft quite a lot as freighters, particularly in the cyclone season when the roads, which were mostly gravel in the northwest, were cut. And of course, supplies had to get through to places like Derby in the northwest. So this was a freighter, and we left at midnight. We got to Derby about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, where we helped to unload it, which took several hours. We helped the local guys to do that. And then we took off for Port Hedland. Now, what was going to happen there was we were going to get off and return to our base, and the aircraft was going to pick up 3 flight attendants and 65 meals. And then the aircraft was then going to fly from Port Hedland to Newman, where it would pick up 65 passengers and fly them to Perth. These were resource workers, miners. This all went very well until we got to Port Hedland and it was completely fogged in, so we couldn't land. So the captain called up the MMA operations in Perth, who called up the Department of Civil Aviation in Canberra, and that was the regulator at the time, and asked for dispensation for the two purser loaders, myself and my colleague, to crew the aircraft from Newman to Perth. And we duly got dispensation to do that. So instead of the miners getting legs like this, they got legs like this. And my colleague was my senior, and he said to me, "I'm not doing that walk up and down the cabin, and I'm not going to serve these passengers. You're going to do that. I'm going to do the PA bit." So it was my role to do the safety drill. And then my next assignment was then to feed the passengers. And all we had to feed them was Ansett fruitcake, Ansett biscuits, and Ansett alcoholic miniatures, and some beer. And as I was serving these miners, they kept telling me that my legs were too hairy and I needed a better shaver. So, yes, I got humiliated all the way between Newman and Perth. These guys cleaned us out of every single bit of alcohol and soft drink we had on board, and they ate all the Ansett fruitcake and biscuits, which was a substitute for a hearty breakfast, which they didn't get. So my colleague and I became the first male flight attendants in the modern era in Australia. I mean, we had male flight attendants in the 30s and 40s, but then after that it was all females until I think it was into the 80s. They started reintroducing male flight attendants on domestic airline services in Australia. So that was a lot of fun. Another little thing to chalk up for my CV, Australia's first male flight attendant, and a funny story. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to us. Please join us. We'd really appreciate your support with the membership perks that we've got, and also to support responsible journalism covering aviation. Please keep those comments coming. They're chicken soup for the soul. Keep those wonderful questions coming as well. We do appreciate them very much. And the next episode to tune in for is when I survived a second inspection at US Customs, which is, of course, US Customs are really in the news at the moment with all sorts of horror stories. Well, this wasn't quite a horror story, but it was frightening nonetheless for me. And that'll be the next episode. So I do look forward to your company. Thank you very much indeed. Take care.